3:45 p.m. Eastern Wartime. WEAF, New York.
The Right to Happiness, usually heard over most of these stations at this time, will not be presented today in order that we may bring you the special program that follows. It will be heard at its regular time tomorrow. The National Broadcasting Company brings you at this time the noted news analyst, H.V. Kaltenborn, with a mid-afternoon summary of the news.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's quite possible that before this broadcast is completed, we will be able to take you to London for an on-the-spot broadcast by one of our observers. But in the meantime, while we're checking up on the signal, I will carry on. Allied invasion forces have cleared the enemy from all of their beachheads in French Normandy. Today they are fighting their way inland. The first heavy German counterattacks in the Caen area have already been beaten off. We have probably occupied the town of Bayeux near Caen, and the first mail has been delivered to our soldiers in France. Weather in the English Channel cleared up this afternoon, which helps enormously, both for air and overseas operations. The American, British, and Canadian assault forces are being reinforced constantly. Hundreds of gliders are shuttling thousands of troops into the Cherbourg Peninsula. Surface craft in large numbers are sailing into the coast. Large areas of French coastline have been freed from the Germans and are now available for safe landings. General Eisenhower's headquarters tells us that heavy fighting is raging inshore. The Germans are striking back against the expanding perimeter of the beachheads. They are putting up little resistance in the air and none at sea. The Berlin radio has just admitted that the Allies landed between 2 and 5 more divisions in France yesterday and last night. We lost 12 gliders and 12 C-47 transport planes during the past 24 hours in these transport operations. We must assume that Marshal Erwin Rommel is speeding armored and infantry divisions to the invasion zone. A full-scale counter-onslaught should develop within 24 hours. The more troops and material we are able to land before that assault comes, the better our chances of hanging on. All our reports indicate that the situation improved considerably last night and early today. Sharp German armored counterattacks in the Caen area, 9.5 miles inland, have been beaten off. The Germans tell us we are now using 100 tanks in an offensive in that single area. The Germans may be emphasizing the importance of our mechanized equipment here to explain the setbacks which they are experiencing here. The Berlin radio has just reported that the Germans lost Bayeux. This town, close to the Normandy shore, is 16 miles northwest of Caen on the railway and highway to Cherbourg. It would probably be the first town we could take, since it is not far inland and lies between 2 of our well-established beachheads. Bayeux is near the center of our most concentrated operations on the Normandy Peninsula. This afternoon, 500 of our biggest bombers, escorted by fighters, attacked the road junctions in the Bayeux area. We are trying to isolate the strongly defended port of Cherbourg against the possibility of any German reinforcements. All beaches have now been cleared of the enemy in this area. Some of them have been linked together. This strengthens our position against counterattack. Our airmen report that the Normandy Peninsula today is dotted with fires. Some suggest that the Germans are carrying out demolitions preparatory to withdrawal. This seems over-optimistic. Shell fire and air bombs set many fires, and perhaps some forest fires. The Germans are following their usual practice of transporting troops by air to meet any sudden threat. British planes shot down 5 big Junkers 52 transport planes while on missions over France. The German radio says that Allied forces today attempted a landing in the Calais area of the French coast along the Straits of Dover. Berlin also asserts that Allied ships approached the French coast from the north, apparently bound through the Dover Straits for the invasion area. This may well be true, but we must be careful in interpreting what it means. There will be all kinds of feints and diversions to keep the Germans busy. Even a landing might be nothing more than a commando raid. The more we keep the Germans stirred up at many places, the less likely they are to concentrate against us at the right places. The Germans also report brisk fighting at the St. Mère Église town. This town is at the southeastern base of the Cherbourg Peninsula. They say it involves the American 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions. British tanks and infantry have occupied a 25-mile stretch of the Normandy coast. They have already pushed inland nearly 3.5 miles and have cut a coast road vital to the Nazi movement of reserves. It looks today as though the Allies have established one continuous beachhead from Cannes to Bayeux. This gives us 25 miles of excellent flat beach on the eastern coast of the Normandy Peninsula. And now to London for a direct report.
This is W.W. Chaplin in London, the spokesman of General Eisenhower's Supreme Headquarters. Allied Expeditionary Force are singing a chorus of caution about the invasion tonight. They show evidences of anxiety that a spirit of over-optimism may result from the truly astounding success of the first phase of our invasion. The reaction, if events should grow more somber, might be damaging. Now, it may not all be like the first phase. During the past 2 days of our fighting men have been cold and wet. They've eaten what and where and when they could. They are very tired. They have not yet got their second wind. Only superb leadership under such conditions can prevent a perfectly natural dip in the invasion grasp. So, Schaeff cautions against optimism, urges sober satisfaction. And Londoners, at least, are heeding that caution. There is an almost dreamlike quality about the British capital. We're so close and yet so detached. The people give no outward signs of the emotions which flame, of course, inside them. And that, I think, is good. They know the die is cast and are glad of it. But they await far more decisive days before they give vent to those emotions. At least, as Schaeff desires, until our men have got their second wind. Our own little underground improvised broadcasting home here, source of the news for all American radio listeners, had a distinguished visitor this afternoon, Mr. Brendan Bracken, Member of Parliament, and Mr. Churchill's Minister of Information, dropped by informally to see how the American broadcasters are making out. He found a lot of unshaven and weary broadcasters hard at work. Some were in once neat uniforms, now wrinkled because they've been used to sleep in on tables and even on the floor. Others in GI battle uniforms, men just back from assignments that took them to the invasion beaches or far behind enemy lines with the paratroops and glider soldiers. The floor was littered with papers. The atmosphere was full of smoke and noise. Shouted questions and answers, clacking typewriters, ringing bells. Occasionally, from a studio door that quickly opens and closes, the tense voice of a broadcaster telling the latest invasion news to American listeners. Mr. Bracken asked if there were any complaints. And there was one. The shortage of Scotch whiskey in the bar across the corridor from the radio newsroom. Mr. Bracken pointed out that the liquor allotment went back several years, to the time when the ministry housed a famous university. Now, he admitted, things are different. And he said that he'd do everything in his power to increase the supply of available Scotch. And now, back to H.V. Kaltenborn in New York.
That caution that Chaplin has just given us from London with regard to over-optimism is undoubtedly needed. It has been almost impossible for us here to resist a feeling of elation over the outstanding success achieved by our early invasion operations. Of course, those of us who have studied the matter realize that there is much that remains to be done, that there are many reasons for caution about the German counterattack, which is not yet developed, that there have been difficulties and there have been losses. And I noted today in the first dispatch that I've seen from Hanson W. Baldwin since the invasion began, the dispatch in which he represents the combined American press that has just come in, He reports from Admiral Kirk's flagship off the French coast that we do not yet have any right to rejoice, as he puts it, over the initial success of invasion. He saw that word, rejoice, in a dispatch from America. And so he says, the word rejoice strikes an incongruous, almost a brutally callous note here in the Bay of Seine, in waters where American bodies lie fathoms deep, near beaches whose blood-drenched names will be forever emblazoned on the battle streamers of regimental colors, forever recorded in the history of our people. It is a word which epitomizes a lack of comprehension of the grim issues here involved, of the long chances and hard struggles ahead. It signifies a sense of overconfidence, and hence is repugnant to the men who are doing the fighting and who know the hard and relentless strength of the enemy. In one sense, however, rejoicing is understood. This operation has been so long prepared, and the war of nerves so great, that there is a positive sense of relief when the first shots are fired, and when one knows that now the grapple to the death has been started. Yes, that tells the story as it is seen and felt by one who is at the scene and who knows that death has come to many a brave American. And yet, with all proper allowance for caution, the Germans themselves tell us that the Allies have occupied a circular area between Boulogne and Corentin on the eastern side of the Cherbourg Peninsula. They also admit that we have opened a corridor to the coast. The forces holding this pocket, they tell us, are now being reinforced by sea and air, and this means that our paratroopers who landed inland have now joined up with our beachhead forces in this area. The Russian military experts take the same optimistic view of the initial success achieved by our landing operations that has been taken by some sources in this country. The military analyst in Izvestia, for example, said these conclusions could be drawn from operations thus far. 1. The Germans proved powerless to prevent the landing of large Allied forces on a comparatively large sector of the coast of northern France. 2. The Allied fleet and air force hold unchallenged supremacy. 3. The fortifications which the Germans have been extolling for so long, the notorious Atlantic Wall, failed to withstand the concentrated fire of naval artillery and the hail of bombs of the Allied Air Force. This Russian analyst says the Germans have 3 armies in France. One in the north, that's the zone of our landings. One is on the Bay of Biscay coast, that's near Spain. And one on the south coast, the Côte d'Azur on the Mediterranean. The Russian analyst did not say so, but he might have added that the Germans do not dare to use either their western or their southern armies against our attack in the north, for they know we have invading armies still available for landings not only in the north, but in addition to those that we might land in the north, we have armies that are poised for the invasion of western France, other armies that are poised for the invasion of southern France. And so, obviously, with all due allowance for that necessary caution, which we must have since the invasion has only begun, with all due allowance for that, there is a definite demonstration during these first 36 hours of the failure of the German Atlantic Wall, of the failure of that German air resistance about which we were so uncertain, of the failure of the Germans to develop any sea power to meet us in the Channel. And so, on that larger issue of German immediate ability to react, we are right. We have the right to be optimistic. Good afternoon.
You have been listening to the noted news analyst H.B. Kaltenborn with a mid-afternoon summary of the news. The Right to Happiness, sponsored by Ivory Soap, usually heard over most of these stations, was not presented today in order that we might bring you the special program just concluded. Right to Happiness will be broadcast at its regular time tomorrow. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Gruen Precision Watch Time. Gruen very thin. Watchmaking Miracle, WEAF, New York.
Mineral oil is effective, but as you know, it doesn't relieve acid indigestion. So try the amazing emulsion called Haley's M.O. that combines fine mineral oil with milk of magnesia to relieve stomach acidity and to give all the mineral oil benefits, too. Follow this advice when you take it. Caution. Use it only as directed on the package. Get Haley's M.O. at druggists today.
And now we present once again Mary Noble, Backstage Wife. The story of a little Iowa girl who marries America's most handsome actor, Larry Noble, matinee idol of a million other women, and the story of the change war brings as Mary finds herself a war wife. Want to know the name of the most popular tooth powder in America? Well, it's Dr. Lyon's tooth powder. Want to know why America's millions have chosen this one particular tooth powder as their overwhelming favorite? Why they continue to single out this same powder in preference to all others, year after year after year? Well, this is why. It's because you can buy nothing. Even if you pay double the price, there's absolutely nothing you can buy that cleans your teeth more quickly, more thoroughly, and above all, more beautifully than Dr. Lyon's. So for the sake of your teeth and your smile, make a note right now to get Dr. Lyon's tooth powder today. And now, Backstage Wife. The beloved story of Mary Noble, now Mary Noble, war wife, since her husband Larry, former Broadway star, is now Lieutenant Noble of the United States Coast Guard, stationed in Washington, D.C. As you know, since Mary is no longer playing in Tom Bryson's play Blackout, she's now living in her little home at Rosehaven on Long Island. Well, tonight it's cold and rainy in Rosehaven, and some time ago, Mary became frightened when she noticed two prowlers out by the garage. She phoned the police, but when they arrived, the men had gone. Later, when they returned, she phoned Tom Bryson at the Comedy Theater in New York and asked him to come out to investigate. Well, it's now a half hour later. We find Mary, Sandra Barkley, and Larry Jr. in the living room.
Are those men still out there, Mary? I don't see their flashlights any longer, Sandra. They may have broken the lock by now and gone into the garage.
But, Mary, why do you suppose they want to break into that empty garage?
I haven't the least idea, Sandra. Oh, dear. I wish Tom would hurry and get here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it seems a shame to make Tom come all the way out here to Rosehaven on this rainy night. Mary, how long ago did you call him at the theater?
Let's see, it was about 8 o'clock. He said he'd catch the next train.
Oh, well, it's about 8:30 now. Should be here before long. Mary, don't you think you better call the police again?
Why, I did call them once, you know, and when they got here, the men had simply disappeared. I hate to call them again, but I'll do that very thing if Tom doesn't get here soon. After all, Sandra, even if those men do break into the garage, what can they steal? There's nothing in there but those garden implements.
Mommy, somebody is coming up the path. I think it's Uncle Tom.
Shall I let him in, Mary?
Wait till he rings, Sandra, and then switch on the porch light and make sure it's him.
All right, Mary.
Mommy, I'm not scared.
I'm glad you're not, darling.
I bet Uncle Tom won't be afraid, will he, Mommy?
Of course not. Your Uncle Tom's very brave.
Hello, Sandra. It's a lovely night for ducks, huh?
It is, darling.
Hello, Uncle Tom.
Well, if it isn't my little pal.
Uncle Tom, There's robbers outside.
So I hear, but don't you worry about them.
I'm in here by the fire, Tom.
Mean you've still got a fire in the fireplace?
Yes. It's been terribly damp in here all day. Tom, you didn't see anyone loitering outside, did you?
No. No, I didn't, Mary. Now, come on, you two. Tell me, what's this all about? A couple of men trying to break into the garage here.
That's right, Tom.
I saw him, Uncle Tom. I wanted to go out and talk to him, but Mommy wouldn't let me.
No, of course she wouldn't, Phil. Your mama's very wise.
Tom, we first noticed the men right after Maud left for the theater. It was just getting dark. I happened to look out the window here, and I saw two men coming up the driveway. First, I thought they were going around to the back door. And they went toward the garage. I called Sandra, and we watched them.
Yes. And first they tried to open the door.
And then they tried to break the lock, didn't they, Mommy?
First, I was going out to ask them what they wanted, but it was raining so hard, and Sandra said they looked like thugs.
And they did, Tom. They looked awfully tough. So then I told Mary to call the police.
So I called the police. Before they got here, the men had left.
Oh, I see. But then they came back later on. The men, I mean.
Yes. As I was talking to you on the phone, I saw a flashlight through this window. Then I heard someone pounding.
Trying to break the lock, huh?
Well, that's what it sounded like.
Well, where are they now?
We don't know. It's so dark we can't see anything from the house, and both Sandra and I were too afraid to go out to the garage and look around.
Yes, for all we know, they may have broken the lock and gone inside.
Well, I guess there's only one way to find out whether they're still there. That's to go out and look.
Oh, Tom, please, don't go out there alone.
What do you mean? Why shouldn't I go out there alone? After all, Mary, we'll never find out anything by sitting in here by this nice warm fire.
But, Tom, if those men are really burglars, they might harm you.
Oh, now look, Sandra. Look, how can the men be burglars when there's nothing in the garage to steal? Now, if they were trying to break into the house, well, that'd be something else again. If they were doing that, I'd surely have the whole local police force here. Mary, maybe they've just made a mistake and have the wrong garage.
Oh, but, Tom, how could they make a mistake like that?
No, I think those men have a good reason for trying to break into our garage. They must have.
Well, Mary, suppose they did break in. Suppose they took everything that's out there. What would they get? Let's see now. 2 old worn-out tires. And, yeah, there's some used garden tools and... What else is there? Oh, yeah, some wood for the fire that I put in there to keep dry.
But, Tom, why is the garage kept locked if there's nothing in there of value?
Well, no particular reason, Sandra. Except to keep the kids around the neighborhood from carting off the garden tools for playthings. In fact, it hasn't been locked at all till just today. When I was out here this morning, I saw the padlock hanging on the door and snapped it closed. I put the key there on the mantel, Mary.
Oh, yes, I remember, Tom.
Well, you got a flashlight, Mary?
There's one in the kitchen. Oh, Tom, I wish you wouldn't go out to the garage tonight.
Oh, now, wait a minute. That's what you asked me to come out here for, wasn't it?
But no, of course not. Sandra and I just... Well, we didn't want to stay here in this house alone all night.
Mary, do you mean that I'm going to have to be stuck out here in Rosehaven all night?
You most certainly are.
Oh, but listen...
Now, Tom, it won't hurt you to spend one night away from Times Square.
Okay. But I probably won't sleep a wink.
Why not?
Well, it's too quiet out here.
Oh, Tom.
Uncle Tom, if you're afraid to go out to the garage all alone, I'll go with you.
Well, thanks, Larry Jr. I appreciate that. In fact, I may take you up on it.
Okay. I'll put on my raincoat.
Larry Jr., you'll stay right here in the house.
But, Mommy, Uncle Tom may need me to help him.
Well, on second thought, Junior, you'd better stay here and protect the ladies.
Oh. All right, Uncle Tom.
But you can run out in the kitchen and get me a flashlight.
Oh, I'll get it right away, Uncle Tom.
Okay.
Tom, I really don't see that anything will be gained by your going out there tonight.
Tom, I agree with Mary. After all, as you just said, there's nothing in the garage that's worth stealing.
Now, look. Listen to me, you two. I didn't come all the way out here to Rosehaven from New York to sit in here by the fire and keep you girls company.
But, Tom...
Mary, don't you realize this is a chance in a lifetime for me?
Chance in a lifetime.
Well, what do you mean, Tom?
Well, I mean, I've always wanted to be a hero, and here's my chance.
Oh, hero.
No? Well, at least in the eyes of Larry Jr.
Oh, now, Tom, stop it. This is no time for joking.
I'm not joking. Why, Larry Jr. would lose his respect for me if I failed him now. Why, he even wants to go out in the garage with me.
Here's a flashlight, Uncle Tom.
Thanks, Larry Jr. Sure out a big help to me.
Uncle Tom, I'll bet if Daddy was here, he'd go out there and help you chase those robbers away, wouldn't he?
There now. You hear that? You bet your daddy'd go out there and help me chase them away, Larry Jr. Why, I never felt so much like a hero in my life.
I'd laugh if after all this display of courage there wasn't anybody out there in the garage.
Oh, yeah? I'd laugh if there was somebody out there. I'll go out the back door.
Now, be careful, Tom.
You know where to send my body in case I meet those two men and lose the argument.
You may think that remark is very funny, but I don't.
Where shall we send the body, Uncle Tom?
Well, you can send it to the... Who said that?
I did, Uncle Tom. I said where...
Now, that's enough, Larry Jr.
Doesn't seem to be very much worried, does it?
Seems to me I saw this very situation in a picture once.
A farce, I suppose.
Goodbye, Uncle Tom.
Goodbye, Larry Jr. What am I saying?
Tom, don't close the door. I'm going to stand here and wait for you.
Now, Mary, you close this door. Can't you see it's raining? First thing you know, you'll be catching cold.
Tom's right, Mary. It is chilly outside.
Mommy, we can hear Uncle Tom holler with the door closed.
You can hear me holler. That's the last straw. Good night.
Good night, Uncle Tom.
Well, I don't think it's a bit funny, Sandra. After all, those men may have gotten into the garage. If Tom interferes with them, they might hurt him.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary. Yes, I know. It is really quite serious.
I'm going to watch from this window. And if Tom doesn't come right back, I'm going to call the police again.
Perhaps Mary is right. If those men are in the garage, Tom might find himself in rather dangerous company. However, we'll learn more about this in tomorrow's episode of Backstage Wife, the story of Mary Noble. Now Mary Noble, War Wife. You may believe that your present dentifrice is as good as there is. But whatever you believe or whatever you do, one fact remains. Among powders, the popularity of one tooth powder, Dr. Lyons, stands unsurpassed. First choice last year, first choice this year, first choice for many years. No greater recommendation, no greater proof of its power to bring out all the natural beauty of your teeth could be asked or given. Of course, there's a reason for this overwhelming popularity. Here it is. It's because you can buy nothing. Even if you pay double the price, there's absolutely nothing you can buy that cleans your teeth more quickly, more thoroughly, and above all, more beautifully than Dr. Lyons. So for the sake of your teeth and your smile, choose Dr. Lyons tooth powder. You'll find it quick and amazingly thorough. But your greatest satisfaction will come when you look in your mirror and see all the natural beauty that your teeth will show. Only then will you understand why more folks have made friends with Dr. Lyons than any other tooth powder in America. Mary Noble, Backstage Wife, will be on the air again tomorrow at this same time. Pierre Andre speaking for the makers of Dr. Lyons Tooth Powder.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.
To relieve an ordinary headache, neuritic, or neuralgic pain fast, do what thousands do. Take 2 Bayer aspirin tablets with a glass of water. They disintegrate quickly and start to work almost instantly. Try them. Get genuine Bayer aspirin today.
And now, Stella Dallas. A continuation on the air of the true-to-life story of mother love and sacrifice, in which Stella Dallas saw her beloved daughter Laurel marry into wealth and society, and realizing the difference in their tastes and worlds, went out of Laurel's life. These episodes in the later life of Stella Dallas are based on the famous novel of that name by Olive Higgins Prouty, and are written by Anne Hummert. Here is a way every person who is subject to acid indigestion can find relief. Take Phillips Milk of Magnesia after meals. It will usually relieve such discomfort in a few minutes. The reason is that such indigestion is often caused by excess acidity in the stomach. And Phillips Milk of Magnesia is rated among the most rapidly effective alkalizers or neutralizers of excess stomach acids known. What's more, when taken at bedtime in water or orange juice, 2 to 4 tablespoons of Phillips Milk of Magnesia will help you to start the day feeling like a new person. Try it. But when you buy, ask for it by its full name, Phillips, Phillips, Milk of Magnesia, not merely Milk of Magnesia alone. And when you take it, follow this advice. Caution. Use only as directed on the package. The 50-cent size, containing 3 times the amount of the 25-cent bottle, is the real economy buy. And besides the familiar liquid form, you can also get the convenient Phillips Milk of Magnesia tablets to carry in pocket or purse at any drugstore. Cost only 25 cents, less than 1 cent a tablet. And now, Stella Dallas. In the darkness of Mrs. Grosvenor's long drawing room, Stella sits alone. A moment ago, the front door was closed, and Stella heard the voices of Laurel's mother-in-law and her guest, Ronald Cartwright. She heard Mrs. Grosvenor's laughter and the enigmatical tones of Ronald. Stella's hands are clenched tightly in her lap. For a moment, she wishes frantically that she might be mistaken about Ronald, that everyone else might be right and herself wrong. But she thinks of her daughter Laurel and the strange picture of Laurel painted by Ronald, a picture without a face. Well, now there are footsteps in the room. Stella doesn't move. Even when the light is switched on, she doesn't move.
Oh, I didn't know you were in here, Mrs. Dallas.
Yes, Mr. Cartwright.
Where is Laurel?
I persuaded her to go to bed.
Well, Mrs. Dallas, I'm glad to have this chance to talk with you. I know you don't think Louise should marry me.
Mr. Cartwright, now please.
I'm the first to admit I haven't much to offer her. But regardless of what you think, I do care for her.
Oh, I'd rather not discuss it.
Oh, no, I don't want you to misunderstand. I begged Louise not to make a settlement of $100,000 on me. And this afternoon, when I heard that the papers had been misplaced, I was delighted. I sincerely hope that those papers are never signed. But if Louise is stubborn about giving me the money, then I'll repay her as soon as I can.
By making money painting again, you mean?
Why, yes. Before the war, I was very successful. And since painting Laurel's portrait, my self-confidence is returning.
It's painting Laurel's portrait.
Why, yes, Mrs. Dallas. Why do you say that so oddly? I believe you'll be very pleased with Laurel's portrait when you see it.
Pardon me, Mr. Cartwright.
Oh, what is it, Horace?
Mrs. Dallas is wanted on the phone.
Oh, thanks, Horace. I'll see who it is. Hello?
How is everything, Stella?
Oh, hello, Min.
I was half out of my mind. What's happened?
Oh, a lot of things, but I can't talk very well over the phone, Min.
Well, I'm at the drugstore. 1 block down. Turn to your left on the side street.
You mean you've come back over here? Oh, honey.
Oh, I didn't go home at all after I left you.
Huh?
I've been right here in the neighborhood.
All this time?
I've been thinking you might be needing me. Say, Stell, could I be slipping in the house now?
No, honey. I'll meet you in the drugstore in 10 minutes.
Stell, here I am.
Oh, man. I ought to fuss at you for not going home. But, gee, I'm so pleased that you didn't. I've never needed to talk to you more.
We'll be sitting down.
Oh.
And there's a cup of coffee.
Oh, gee, thanks, Min.
Go ahead, drink it. You're needing it, Stell. What did Mrs. Grosvenor do? Give Mr. Cartwright all that money?
No, she hasn't yet. The paper she had to sign in order to do it was taken off the desk in the library.
Oh.
And Mr. Nelson, the lawyer, had to get a plane to California, so she hasn't made Mr. Cartwright that present of $100,000 yet.
Holy seas. What are you meaning about the papers?
I took 'em in.
Huh?
Yes, and then Horace's wife, Allie, burned them up.
You took the papers away from Mrs. Grosvenor?
She don't know I did. Oh, Min, things couldn't be worse. I've only got a day or so to prove that Mr. Cartwright don't care a thing for Miss Grosvenor and that he's a rascal. But I've got no evidence to back up my suspicions, none.
Well, will you be getting back to the papers?
Oh, I told you what happened.
You have not at all. Since when have you started taking legal papers away from folks?
Oh, it didn't seem wrong to me to take the papers out of the library. Of course, I didn't mean for Allie to burn them, but she knew I had them. And she got them out of my pocketbook and threw them in the fire.
Oh, Stell, that's awful. Don't you know what Mrs. Grosvenor will be doing to you if she finds out?
Well, I did it for her sake. I was trying to gain time, and of course I'll protect Allie. I mean to take the whole blame when I do explain.
But, Stell, how could you be taking such an awful risk?
Listen, Min. If I hadn't done it, Ronald Cartwright would have $100,000 of her money right now. Oh, I'm not sorry when I think of that. No, indeed, I'd do it all over again. I'd have been a coward not to take those papers. Gee, I'm mad, Min. I'm fighting mad. I don't like Mr. Cartwright. And I don't like Horace either. And I'll fight in any way I see to show Miss Grosvenor that they're mean, horrible people.
Well, why don't you be telling Mrs. Grosvenor about Horace slipping into your place at the rooming house?
Oh, she wouldn't believe me, that's why. She won't believe anything I say. There's only one way I may be able to get proof.
What's that?
Min, I'm so far from being positive it will help that I better not talk about it. But it's something I'm going to do tonight. Something I'm going to do just as soon as I get back to the house.
Will you stop bemoaning what's happened, Horace?
It was your business, Cartwright, to get Mrs. Grosvenor to sign those papers today.
Well, confound it, what did happen to them? The instant before Louise came in to sign them, they disappeared. How did it happen? Who took them?
Well, it wasn't Allie, as we've let Mrs. Grosvenor think. It was Laurel Grosvenor.
But Laurel has no objection to my marrying her mother-in-law.
Evidently she has. I know she took the papers.
Well, that's hard to believe. I'd like to think Mrs. Dallas did. I'd like to inform Louise myself that Mrs. Dallas had taken them.
She didn't. It was Laurel. You've lost $100,000, and Laurel is responsible.
Well, if I thought that Laurel had
She
taken
did.
them,
She's the only one in the house who could have done it. Mrs. Dallas is waiting in the living room.
Well, Laurel will regret it.
Yes, but that doesn't solve our immediate problem. The portrait upstairs has got to be taken away.
I told Louise I'd restore it.
Fine. Just what you should have done. But it's got to be removed from the house. We're in danger while it's here.
If we're in danger, it's because the hands were cut to ribbons with a knife.
Cartwright, what does it take to convince you that Mrs. Dallas had to be stopped from comparing the hands in the portrait with Laurel's? She would have discovered that it's the picture Laurel posed for and not the Grosvenor ancestress.
She's got no reason not to think Laurel's portrait is being framed, as I said it was.
You don't know what she thinks, Cartwright. The picture upstairs is Laurel's portrait, with the exception of the face.
The picture is a copy of the original. If the canvas hadn't been cut, no one would ever have doubted that it was the portrait of Clarice Elizabeth.
All right, but now it's got to be removed from the house before Mrs. Dallas begins concentrating on the likeness of her daughter's hand.
No, that's ridiculous, Horace. If Mrs. Dallas suspected anything, she'd tell Louise.
I'll go in the portrait room now. While Mr. Cartwright is downstairs. The door to the drawing room was closed. I'll bet Horace is in there talking to him. Well, that's not my concern right now. Where's the light? What? The light don't turn on. That's funny. Oh, there's a lamp over here. Well, it don't either. Well, the globe's been taken out. Gosh, if that's not something. I've got to have light to see Clarice Elizabeth's picture. Oh, the candlesticks. Yes, now if I can just find a match. There was a box right... Yes, here they are. I'll light the candles. Yeah. Gee, how strange the room looks by candlelight. And the portrait. The hands cut to pieces like that. Oh, it makes me heartsick every time I see them. They're so like Lolly's hands. And cut in this dreadful way. That finger. The fourth finger bent just like Lolly bends hers. I'll just... Yes. Yes, a lot of these little pieces of canvas could be pulled off without any trouble at all.
Mrs. Dallas.
Who's that? Oh, Horace.
What are you doing here?
Just looking at the picture of Clarice Elizabeth.
You startled me when I saw you here with the candles.
Did I?
I'm sorry, but Mr. Cartwright sent me to take the picture down.
Oh, to take it down?
Mrs. Grosvenor wants him to restore the damage my wife did. So I'll take it over to my apartment and examine it thoroughly, and Mr. Cartwright will restore it.
Oh, sure. Go right ahead, Horace, and take it off the wall and out of the house. I got no reason to want to see it again. None at all. I've seen it tonight, and that's enough.
There's vivid excitement in Stella's voice. And for a moment, by the light of the candles, Horace stares at her suspiciously. But Stella meets his gaze evenly. And Horace can't see that Stella is holding something in her hand, something she pulled from the portrait. Well, don't miss the surprising turn of drama in tomorrow's absorbing chapter of Stella Dallas. Here's a quick and easy way to overcome acid indigestion, stomach distress that often occurs when you eat too much or too quickly. What you do is this. Alkalize the excess acidity of your stomach by taking Phillips Milk of Magnesia. You'll find that your stomach upset will be relieved quickly and gently. That's because Phillips Milk of Magnesia is rated among the most rapidly effective alkalizers or neutralizers of excess stomach acids known. And stomach upsets are usually caused by an excessively acid condition of the stomach. What's more, when taken at bedtime in water or orange juice, 2 to 4 tablespoons of Phillips Milk of Magnesia will help you to start the day feeling on top of the world, fresh as a daisy, ready to tackle the problems of the day. So keep Phillips Milk of Magnesia handy. But when you buy, ask for it by its full name, Phillips Milk of Magnesia, not merely for Milk of Magnesia alone. And when you take it, follow this advice. Caution, use only as directed on the package. Besides the familiar liquid form, you can also get the convenient Phillips Milk of Magnesia tablets to carry in pocket or purse. Cost only 25 cents, less than 1 cent a tablet at any drugstore. This chapter in the later life of Stella Dallas is written by Anne Hummert and is based on the famous character created by Olive Higgins Prouty in her great novel. Stella Dallas will be on the air at the same time tomorrow, 4:15 p.m. Eastern Wartime. This is Frank Gallup speaking.
Many doctors say women need more iron than men. So supplement your diet with ironized yeast tablets. You get extra iron to help keep your blood rich and red. Extra vitamin B1 to help keep your nerves steady. Ironized yeast tablets.
This program came to you from New York. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
4:30 Eastern Wartime, WEAF, New York. New York. This program may be interrupted to bring you the latest war bulletins.
And now, smile a while with Lorenzo Jones and his wife, Belle. We all know couples like lovable, impractical Lorenzo Jones and his devoted wife, Belle. Lorenzo's inventions have made him a character to the town, but not to Belle, who loves him. Their struggle for security is anybody's story, but somehow with Lorenzo, it has more smiles than tears. The next time you feel an ordinary headache or the pains of neuritis or neuralgia coming on, take 2 Bayer aspirin tablets with a little water immediately. Chances are, if you do this at once, your whole day may be saved. That's because quick-acting Bayer tablets give such fast relief. They start to dissolve or disintegrate almost instantly you take them, hence are ready to start working without delay. So always ask for Bayer aspirin when you buy, not for aspirin alone. You can identify it by the name Bayer, stamped in the form of a cross on every tablet. Price only 15 cents for 12, or 2 full dozen for a quarter. And now, Lorenzo Jones and his wife, Belle. Lorenzo has come across his high school yearbook and, to his surprise and delight, discovers that a great future was predicted for him, either as a scientist, poet, or financier. But once the delight wears off and he begins to ask whether he's lived up to his early promise, he goes into a decline. And finally, to salve his conscience, decides that if he hasn't made his mark in the world, then it must be Belle who's held him down. In the Jones living room, Belle is talking to Chester's wife, Bertie.
Imagine it, Bertie, placing the blame on my doorstep, accusing me of holding him back. Why, I was flabbergasted.
You're really serious, Belle?
Of course.
Lorenzo is saying that if he hadn't married you, he'd have made a big name for himself.
That's right.
Well, of all things. It's hard to believe.
I wouldn't mind if we'd had a quarrel, or if he'd said things that he'd be sorry for later on, but that didn't happen. I'd asked him to dispose of some old papers, and among them was his high school yearbook, the blue and the gold.
His high school yearbook?
Yes, and there was his picture, and he was listed as the most original, the most likely to succeed, and a lot more. Apparently, he was the outstanding member of his class.
Is that so?
Well, we laughed a bit and reminisced, and suddenly he got very thoughtful. After rereading the biographical sketch which predicted he'd make his mark as scientist, poet, or financier. It must have occurred to him that he hadn't lived up to his early promise, and as usual, he wanted to know why.
Oh, but, Belle, are you saying that he's taken the high school prophecies seriously?
Of course. What's prevented me from reaching the top of the ladder, he asked. And when I said, I don't know, dear, he laughed in a peculiar way and replied, something must have stopped me, Belle. Or someone. And when he said someone, he stared right at me. And I'll tell you one thing, Bertie, I never felt so uncomfortable in my whole life.
But did he mention you by name, Belle? Did he actually say that if he hadn't married you, he'd have been an important man today?
Yes and no.
I don't quite understand.
Well, he went about it this way. He said that I was so practical, so down to earth, and so logical that every time he wanted to do something, spread his wings, as he calls it, I'd say, look before you leap, Lorenzo, and wait, dear, don't plunge in before considering, and that, he said, was the same as holding a man down.
Oh, the very idea.
And when I protested, when I said that I'd tried to help him all our married life, he agreed and said I had tried, but that I'd failed. I was shocked, Bertie.
Well, of course you were, Belle.
He's had his disappointments, I admit it. But so have most people.
Mm-hmm.
He's tried to make his fortune as an inventor. He's proclaimed his genius to anybody who'd listen. But it hasn't done him very much good.
And so he blames you?
Yes.
Has he ever accused you before?
No.
Well, you mean to say that until he reread the high school yearbook the other night, he'd never said a word on the subject?
Not once.
Oh, then I'd forget the whole thing, Belle. I'd put it right out of my mind.
But, Bertie...
I mean it. Well, he's just talking to hear himself talk. And when a man does that, the only thing to do is not to pay any attention. He'll unwind in a few days.
Well, you don't think he means it? It's just...
Of course. The average man, when pressed, as it were, enjoys blaming his wife for his own failures. I've never known an exception.
Oh.
It's a weakness of the male animal.
Oh.
Ignore him, Belle, as I suggested before, and then, one of these days, bring up the subject yourself and put him on the carpet.
Lorenzo?
Certainly. Make him admit that he was wrong. And if I know the average man, he'll beg your forgiveness. And then
yes.
You take your time forgiving. Keep him on tenterhooks for a week or so.
Oh.
Well, that's how I'd manage Chester. Not that it's necessary, of course, but if he ever got any ideas into his head about how I've stood in his way, believe me, Belle, I'd let him have a piece of my mind.
My dear Jones, this I can admit in confidence. Like you, I've had a millstone around my neck for several years.
You mean Bertie?
Precisely. Oh, good woman, mind you, the apple of my eye, but always making a fetish out of logic.
Golly.
Look before you leap, she says, at least 10 times a day, and worse luck, old man, that's just what I've been doing.
Amazing. Simply amazing.
Yeah, you know, Jones, by nature, women are cautious. That's an obvious fact.
You mean they're concerned with the woof and the warp, while we, the male, look for new worlds to conquer, is that it?
Precisely.
And in the struggle that ensues, we give in to them. They triumph, and we don't even know that we've lost.
Yeah, that's nicely put, old man.
Yeah. Well, you know, if I hadn't checked back on the blue and the gold, the high school yearbook, I'd have gone on my nose to the grindstone, peering neither to the right nor the left.
Undoubtedly.
Amazing. Simply amazing.
Tell me, old man, just what did the blue and gold say about you?
Oh, golly, everything that I've always believed. That I'd hit the top, bang, either as a scientist, poet, or financier.
Sure. That's a most interesting coincidence, old man.
It is?
That the school prognostication for you should more or less be identical with what was said about me.
Oh.
Yes, mine appeared in the Crocodile. That was our school publication. I was the editor, of course.
What did the Crocodile prognosticate?
You won't think I'm boasting, John?
No, of course not, sir.
Well, then, after being voted the handsomest, the strongest, the best athlete, the most likely to succeed, the most talented, etc., they noted, as for Chester Van Dyne, this is from memory, old man.
Oh, naturally.
As for Chester Van Dyne, it seems safe to predict that his future is assured. Most likely as a prominent member of the diplomatic corps.
Golly.
And this I wouldn't admit to anyone but you, old man, for fear of being thought a bit conceited. Or the tycoon of a great financial empire. Naturally, some may say that youthful enthusiasm may have colored the prospects a bit, but that, you might say, is still a moot question.
Oh, well, of course. Very moot. In your case as well as mine.
Oh, thanks, old man.
Yeah. There's just one point to examine, Chester. Would you say that Bertie has blocked your path or inhibited you in any way?
Yes, Jones. It grieves me to confess it, but it's true. If she were here now, if she had heard me say a word about the diplomatic corps, she'd have collapsed with laughter. And I suppose the same would go for Mrs. Jones.
Exactly. The successor to Thomas Edison's mantle? Don't be ridiculous, Lorenzo, she'd comment.
But she wouldn't laugh, would she?
No, but see, that's just a difference in technique.
Right, quite.
But Bertie'd laugh, Bella get sarcastic. It's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. It's strange, isn't it, that
you and I should be like two peas in a pod.
Well, not so strange. We're both unusual men, Jones. It's only the stubborn and the obstinate would fail to concede that point.
Correct. And if it hadn't been for the blue and the gold, I would never have realized that I had failed to live up to my early promise.
Precisely. And if you hadn't have brought up the topic, I would have gone on, not realizing that a millstone was tied around my neck. A mental millstone, to make the distinction clear. Now what, old man?
Chester, let's face it. We have come to certain conclusions about ourselves that, loosely speaking, we really haven't hit the top of the ladder. True?
Between me and you, yes, old man.
So, what are the nights, Skipper? I mean, what steps are necessary?
That's a nice point, John.
Yeah, now you have a thought. If not, may I make a suggestion?
Yes, of course.
Would you say that the time has come to strike off the chains that bind us?
Break them, Jones?
Well, figuratively, of course. Just lay down the law to the girls. Inform them that their constant state of caution has hindered your progress and mine, and say, in fact, from now on, cease.
Jones, this suggestion isn't too drastic, is it, old man?
Chester, there comes a moment when there's only one way out. The drastic way.
Lorenzo! Lorenzo, are you in the workshop?
That's the little woman. Belle?
Oh. Bertie's waiting for you, Chester. She says you're having dinner with the Petersons.
Oh, yes. Thanks very much, Mrs. Jones. I'll dash along.
Yeah, okay, Chester. See you tomorrow.
Fine. Goodbye, Mrs. Jones.
Goodbye, Chester.
A wonderful man, all right.
Chester?
Of course. Like me, a doer of deeds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when he was at school, he, too, was picked as the most likely to succeed.
Oh.
And again, like me, thwarted in his effort to reach the top of the ladder.
Mm-hmm. Who's thwarted him?
Can you keep a secret?
Well, of course.
Bertie.
Bertie?
Just confessed it, Belle. She's too practical for him, too cautious. And we sort of agreed that is the trouble with wives. They can't see beyond their noses. Oh, golly dear, what's the matter? Did I say something to upset you?
Well, the fat's in the fire. If Lorenzo and Chester both say that their wives have held them back, can there be any truth in it? Or, as usual, is there another side to the story? If you're subject to frequent headaches, by all means see your doctor. He may find the cause and correct it. But next time you have an ordinary headache and seek really quick relief, try taking 2 quick-acting Bayer aspirin tablets with a full glass of water. Do this, and we believe you'll say it's one of the most reliable, fast-acting reliefs you've ever found. Anyone who uses real Bayer aspirin, we are certain, will tell you this about it. Tell you it works quickly, yet gently. For real Bayer aspirin tablets disintegrate in the stomach without delay, hence are ready to start working almost instantly. That's one reason, when you're especially anxious to find fast relief from a headache, neuritic, or neuralgic pain that threatens to spoil your day, to get Bayer aspirin. Another reason for always asking for Bayer aspirin when you buy, instead of just for aspirin alone, is that the present price of Bayer aspirin in the economy size of 100 tablets is so low, there's no point in accepting an unknown preparation in its place. For instance, you can now get real Bayer aspirin at any drugstore in the United States for a little more than 1/2 cent a tablet when you buy the 100-tablet bottle. Thousands of people are now buying Bayer aspirin in this economy size. Try it. The makers of Bayer aspirin invite you to listen in tomorrow at this time for the next episode of the story of Lorenzo Jones. Your announcer, George Putnam.
Medical records reveal women need more iron than men.
So supplement your diet with ironized yeast tablets. You get extra iron to help keep your blood rich and red, extra vitamin B1 to help keep your nerves steady. Ironized yeast tablets. Ironized yeast tablets.
The following program may be interrupted so that we may be able to bring you the latest war bulletins. Again, the makers of Phillips Milk of Magnesia toothpaste and tooth powder present the moving human drama of a woman's heart and a mother's love. Young Widow Brown. In the little town of Simpsonville, attractive Ellen Brown, with 2 children to support, faces the question of what she owes to them and what she owes to herself. Here's a story of life and love as we all know it. Today we have been asked by our government to bring you this message. 2 million women are wanted at once to work on farms and in factories, to join the wax and waves, to help in stores, restaurants, laundries, and other community services. Every woman who is able to work and can possibly take a job is asked to go to her local United States Employment Service office tomorrow and find out what jobs are available, both full and part-time. Take a job to help shorten the war. And now for the story of young Widow Brown. Ellen Brown is saying goodnight to Captain Anthony Loring, her fiancé. A troubled goodnight, for her son Mark is still missing from his home.
Look, darling, why can't I sit on your doorstep all night? At least I'd be near enough in case you wanted me to talk to you about this.
No, Anthony, no. Go along back to the hotel. It's enough that you're near and that I can telephone you, dear.
Once more, I could point out the advantage of a marriage between you and me. However, this is not the time.
No, it's not the time. Will you stop at the police station on your way to the mansion house?
Certainly.
And call me?
Uh-huh.
And forgive me for being so very emotional and unbrave.
Darling, you have every right in the world to feel the way you do. It's your son who's lost. That gives you special privileges. I'm sure he's going to show up sometime tonight, though.
Anthony, if he only would, if he could only know that this is the place to come. If I could only get that message to him. Anthony, how could I have brought him up this far and not make him confident of me?
Now, look, if you intend to sit here with that on your mind, I'm not going to budge.
No, I'll go indoors, I promise, and I'll relax. I'll go up and talk with Janie.
All right, and call me, darling, will you, as often as you like?
Yes, dear.
And remember, Mark did go out to Camp Mercer to see me, and that means he's all right.
Yes, dear.
Good night, sweet.
Good night, Anthony.
But Janie is not in her room, for still frightened over the crime he thinks he helped commit, Mark has gotten his young friend, Phoebe McIntosh, to go to Janie for help. And now the 2 girls are hurrying down the street.
Phoebe, don't hurry so. I can't keep up with you.
Well, Janie, I've got parents which will be looking for me if I'm not in my bed.
Well, my mother doesn't know I'm out either, but I still can't walk with a stitch in my side.
All right, I'll try to walk slower. But if it was my brother, I'd hurry.
He isn't wounded, is he? Just waiting to see me. I'm kind of mad at him anyway.
I don't think you should be.
Well, it wasn't fair of Mark to make me swear by the oath of the dead buffalo not to tell Mother.
What do you mean it wasn't fair, Janie?
Well, it wasn't fair. He knows I'd never violate that oath.
Well, that's why he did it, you dope.
And you shouldn't call me a dope, besides. Stop walking fast again. You've got on play shoes, and I've got heels.
Serves you right for being so dressy and grown up, Janie. Everybody says you're just rushing everything.
They do not. Who says that? That isn't true. That's terrible.
Well, nobody says it really, but I think you are. All of a sudden you get very stuffy and grown up.
Oh, don't be silly. Where's Mark been all day? What did he tell you?
He says he's a desperate man and he's going to jail and all that. He's in a terrible mess, Janie.
Well, what did he do? Did he tell you?
No.
I wouldn't be one bit surprised if he didn't do anything, Phoebe.
Janie, he's a desperate man and he means it.
I think you're pretty hard-hearted to talk like that.
Well, I'm thinking of my mother, who's just beside herself. My goodness, Phoebe, if you had a son who disappeared, you'd be desperate, not him.
Well, he hasn't disappeared because he's right in my father's garage.
Well, why doesn't he come home to his own garage?
He doesn't go home to his own garage on account of the police will arrest him.
Why?
Because of being a criminal. Why do you think?
Phoebe, my brother is not a criminal.
He is so. He said he was himself.
He was bragging.
Why would he brag about being a criminal? Janie, don't be so silly ridiculous.
Oh, Mark's like that. He brags a lot.
He does not brag, Janie. Mark's a very lovely person. He doesn't brag, and he isn't one little bit conceited. He's a nice boy, Mark is.
All right. He's a nuisance for a brother. My heavens, I'm going to get out of that dead buffalo oath just as fast as I can. I'm not going to let my mother be so unhappy. That's terrible.
Well, you and Mark can talk about that. Oh, my.
What?
My father and mother are going out. Oh, I hope Mark has sense enough to get out of the garage before they see him there.
Well, what should we do, Phoebe?
Wait right here behind the hedge. Don't let them see you, Janie. For goodness sakes, don't let them see you.
And in Chicago, Judith Carter, the wife of the man who has brought all this upset into the life of Ellen and her family, is talking with her son John, fearful of what her husband may be doing back in Simpsonville.
John, what are we to do? What can we do now?
Well, there are a lot of things we can do, Mother, but the first one is for you to quit worrying.
Oh, John, I can't bear for it to happen again. For Simon to go to prison again.
I know, Mother, I know. Just let me think the thing over.
It's the same crowd again, John. The same ones who mixed him up in the thing before. Ferguson is right in Simpsonville waiting while your father does what he has to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's so changed, John, so terribly changed. I never realized what prison could do to him.
Well, let's get a couple more of the details, Mother.
Well, there aren't many, John, just what I've told you. Simon intends to get hold of that money he hid before he went to prison 10 years ago. And he can only get it if he finds the crossword puzzle.
And the crossword puzzle was in the handbag she picked up in mistake for her own.
Yes.
And Father thinks this Ellen Brown knows the value of the puzzle?
Well, he argues that if she didn't know it was valuable, why didn't she send it back with the other things that were in my handbag?
Uh-huh.
And he was so sure that she had it that he got her little boy Mark to help him.
Oh, that's a crummy thing to do, Mother.
Yes. Oh, but John... Dear, what's the use? I want you to like him and trust him, to respect your father, but...
Now, don't worry, Mother. That's not important at this point.
It is important, John. It's what I've lived for and fought and prayed for all these years. That when Simon came out of prison, we could have at least a few years of happiness and contentment.
10 years in jail is apt to embitter anybody, Mother.
Then there's the disgrace. Oh, I tried so to shield you from that, so that you wouldn't be embarrassed and humiliated, John. Changing our name.
From Blake to Carter.
Peter Blake. We changed it to Simon Carter. Oh, I wonder whatever became of the real Peter Blake. The man I married. The man who thought my son John was the most wonderful person in the world.
Take it easy, Mother.
I wrote him when he was in prison. Wrote him everything you did. About our plans for you. How my job was holding up, and how you were working after school, and how proud he'd be of you.
Yep.
And I told him about Millicent. Oh, John, what shall we do about Millicent?
We're not going to worry about her.
And that was my greatest joy, your happy marriage. And the fact that I'd been able to keep things so that she wouldn't know about your father, so that she and her family would... Well, it proves, doesn't it, that you can't build anything on lies, no matter how well-intentioned they are.
Yep.
You're found out. You're always found out.
Mother, listen, dear.
So you will suffer for what your father did, and Millicent will suffer, and the baby when it arrives in this world. Oh, John, what can we do? Simon isn't evil. He's weak. And he wanted so much to give you the good things of life.
Mother, dear, listen, I don't have any beef against my father at all. You've got to remember that. I'm just going a little bit daffy trying to figure out how to get him out of this jam.
Oh, it's too late, John.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Just let me figure it a bit, huh?
Your leave. Your precious little leave, darling. This is a horrid way to spend it. Millicent must hate me.
Millicent never hated anybody.
You're home for such a little while, and now I take your time and your thoughts. Oh, John, it's so unfair.
I think I'll go to Simpsonville, Mother.
Why, John.
If Father's still there, perhaps the sight of me might bring him back to the straight and narrow path. Son in uniform and all that. Make his conscience start churning.
Well... Oh, but, darling, that's not fair to Millicent.
She'll understand. You'd be amazed at how much Millicent does understand, Mother.
John, when I came back here to Chicago today, I had such a strong determination to follow one particular path.
What path?
To forget Simon. To forget him and his problems and his worries.
You couldn't do it, Mother.
No, you can't. I can't let Simon go, John. No matter how much better it would be for you. I can't settle down here and forget him and not be responsible for him.
I can't either.
No. You see? I've saddled you with my responsibilities.
They're not your responsibilities, Mother. They're mine. I remember Father very well.
Oh, but John,
I remember Sundays in the park when I was 8 or 9. I remember baseball games. I remember following the comics with him. Meeting him when he'd get off the bus with the paper so that we could talk about what happened. Oh, I remember a lot of things about my father.
Oh, John, you actually talk as if you loved him.
I've got swell memories of him along with the tough ones. Now listen. Tell me about this town of Simpsonville. Where is it? How do you get there? And how long does it take both ways?
So another newcomer is about to arrive in Simpsonville. And in the meantime, what of Ellen and her missing son? What of Simon Carter himself? Be sure to listen again tomorrow for Young Widow Brown. And now, Ellen.
America never wants to be second to anyone, not even to our gallant allies. In Great Britain, about 55% of the women are now engaged in war work. In Russia, about 75% of all workers are women. American women want to top this, and must top it, if we're to meet our 1944 production schedules and keep the home front running. With more and more of our men being called into the armed services every day, American women who are not now employed and who are able to work are needed by the hundreds of thousands and even millions to take their places at once in war plants and in essential civilian jobs. There's a particular need for women workers in armament production, on farms, in factories, and in such essential civilian jobs as grocery clerks, waitresses, salesgirls, laundresses, cooks, streetcar and train conductors. Every woman who is able to work is urged to go to the nearest United States Employment Service office tomorrow and find out what jobs are open to her. I repeat the name, the United States Employment Service office. The address is in the telephone directory. Take a job and help shorten the war.
Thank you, Ellen. Today's performance of Young Widow Brown was presented by the makers of Phillips Milk of Magnesia toothpaste and tooth powder, in cooperation with the drug, cosmetic, and allied industries, on behalf of the government's campaign to recruit woman power. Young Widow Brown will be on the air at this same time tomorrow, 4:45 p.m. Eastern War Time. George Ansbro, speaking for the makers of Phillips Milk of Magnesia toothpaste and tooth powder.
Ladies, don't let your skin go. Don't let carelessness rob your skin of its natural beauty. Use Phillips Milk of Magnesia face creams at once and use them regularly. See how they soften and smooth the skin, and at the same time help neutralize any excess acid accumulations in the external pore openings. Get Phillips Milk of Magnesia skin cream and Phillips Milk of Magnesia cleansing cream today.
This program came to you from New York. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
p.m. GRUEN, Gruen Precision Watch Time. The Curvex, accurate, dependable. WEAF, New York.
This is Don Hollenbeck in New York. We delay our program momentarily to bring you late invasion bulletins. A German military commentator admits Allied operations in France have been extended to a front of about 140 miles. He further says the Allied beachhead between Cherbourg and Le Havre is 25 miles long by a few miles deep. And this final admission by the enemy that the Nazi defenses are finding it difficult to cope with the many divisions of airborne and parachute forces which have landed in swarms between Le Havre and Cherbourg. But NBC's W.W. Chaplin, reporting direct from London, said only an hour ago there are evidences of anxiety among the Allied leaders, probably as a bulwark against any over-optimism on our part. Chaplin described our invasion troops as being very tired and waiting to get their second wind. NBC shortwave monitors heard a Berlin broadcast admitting the loss of Bayeux, an inland town about 40 miles from Caen. This news came to you from the NBC newsroom in New York.
When a Girl Marries. Certo, the natural fruit pectin that jams and gels fruits the quick, certain way, presents When a Girl Marries, a story of young married life dedicated to everyone who has ever been in love. This summer, promise yourself that every berry, every bit of fruit you can get your hands on will be put by for next winter's good eating. Yes, can and preserve and make your own delicious fruit jams and clear, sparkling jellies. The more, the merrier eating for the box lunchers, the morning toast eaters, and, well, I guess just everyone in the family. Now, if you're like most women, time's pretty precious. So you won't want to spend time over a hot stove, stirring, boiling, testing jams and jellies. Instead, you'll want to do what champion jelly makers have been doing for years. Make your sweet spreads with Certo. Yes, ma'am, prize-winning jelly makers discovered years ago that they could make sweet spreads faster, more delicious, and fresh-flavored with Certo. Oh, Certo will give you beautiful jams and jellies in a fraction of the time you'd spend the old-fashioned way. Just a half-minute boil for jelly, a minute for jam, and all fruits set with Certo. So, of course, you get more finished spreads, because the juice hasn't time to boil away in steam. With Certo, there's an average bonus of 4 more glasses than you'd get from the same amount of fruit made the long boil way. So, when you make jellies and jams this summer, have them more delicious, more fresh-flavored. Make them with America's favorite fruit pectin, Certo. Start now. Get fruit, sugar, and Certo. And now, When a Girl Marries, the story of Joan and Harry Davis. Last night, Joan decided that she could no longer stay with Harry. Not when he had gone to Betty Skidmore, when she asked him not to. When she had told him that she would leave him if he did. Now, the next morning, there's a ring at the doorbell of the Field house in Stanwood. Lily, with a clutch of fear at her heart, is certain that it's Harry Davis who has come after Joan and Sammy. And Mrs. Field is bracing herself to meet him as Nettie swings open the door and cries out,
"Why, Mr. Stanley. Excuse me, I guess I should say Captain Stanley."
Hello, Nettie. You certainly should. Is Mrs. Field home? Oh, there you are. Say, am I glad to see you.
Phil Stanley. I don't believe it.
Yep, I'm invalided home, although I don't feel much like an invalid. Well, what do you think about being a captain and Say, hello, who is this? Hey, this couldn't be. Don't tell me. This great big guy isn't my godson.
Oh, Mr. Stanley, the Lord be praised if you isn't like manna from heaven.
Lily, well, what do you know? This is a homecoming to end all homecomings. I just don't believe you're here. I just don't believe that's Sammy. Hello, young fella. Are you Sammy Davis?
Sammy Davis.
Why, he's gigantic. Why, he's ready to fly a P-38. He's a humdinger. Mrs. Field, don't tell me Joan's here, too.
Yes, she's here, but she's asleep.
Oh, say, this is out of this world. Wonderful. I had no idea she was home. Mother never said a word about
She
it.
arrived last night.
And look at you, Mr. Stanley, with all them ribbons on your chest. My, but you look good.
Say, if I look good, you ought to know how good you look to me, all of you. And you too, Nettie. Oh, it's just like old times to be home again. Just like old times to be over here in your house and to have Joan here, too. Don't tell me Harry's upstairs.
No, and Harry's still in Beechwood.
I can't get over it. Coming home and finding everybody I want most to see right next door. Hey, Sammy, haven't you got something to say besides looking at me out of those big blue eyes? Hey, he's a spitting image of Joan, isn't he?
Yes, I think he looks a lot like her.
Tell me everything, Lily. Tell me, how's Mrs. Cameron? And how's my farm getting on? Golly, I've got a lot to catch up on.
Yes, sir. Miss Cameron, she's fine. And the farm is fine, too. They got a good price for the potatoes, and they got more in the ground coming up so fast you can almost hear them grow.
Oh, say, that's great. And what about her kids? What about Kathy and Rudy?
Oh, they're fine, too.
Well, sit down, Phil, and have a cup of coffee with us. We're just going to have breakfast.
You don't have to coax me. Oh, it's so good to sit here at your table and look at you all. Come on, Sammy. Can't you say something to me? Can't you say Phil? That's my name. Can't you say, hi, Captain?
Say Captain Phil, Sammy. Go on.
Cap Phil?
Now you've got it.
Oh, he's so taken with you, Captain Stanley. He can't take his eyes off you. He won't even eat the rest of his breakfast.
Say, maybe I ought to stay outside till he's through.
Go, Cap Phil. Go, Cap Phil.
He wants to go to you. He wants for you to take him.
Oh.
Well, I like that when he wouldn't even let his grandmother come near him.
Oh, well, he feels different about me. You see, I'm his godfather. You've got to stay on the right side of a godfather because he's supposed to shower you with things.
Take Sammy, Cap Phil.
Oh, okay. Hey, how do you get him out of his contraption?
I'll lift the tree.
All right, big boy. Up you go.
Down. Put Sammy down. Sammy Big Boy.
Oh, golly, will you listen to that little tyke talk? He can say everything as plain as day, can't he?
Cap Phil, go bye-bye. Sammy, take Cap Phil, bye-bye.
Oh, now, what the dickens does that mean?
I'm not sure. You see, he just arrived.
It means he wants you to go out and play with him, Captain Stanley.
Why, sure. We'll go out and play, Sammy.
Only you'll let Captain Phil have a cup of coffee, won't you, Sammy?
No.
Oh, no.
Sammy, take Cap Phil, bye-bye. Come on.
You come on, Sammy. You come on out to the kitchen with Lily and get your egg. You ain't finished your breakfast, and you ain't never going to finish it, filling your eyes full of Captain Stanley in that uniform either. Come along with Nana, Sammy, and eat your egg good. Then you can come back and Captain Phil will go out and play with you.
No.
Yes, you do like Lily said. Do you hear? I don't want any more argumentation.
Go, Captain.
I ain't never seen him take to nobody like he's took to you.
Well, that's fine. That's the way it ought to be, isn't it? That's the way a guy should feel about his godfather.
No, Nanny. Go away. Bad Nanny. Sammy, go, Captain.
I just got to pick you up bodily, Sammy Davis, and carry you out to the kitchen.
There he goes.
Well, you made quite a conquest, haven't you?
I honestly think he liked me.
Well, I don't see how he could help it, Phil. You look simply wonderful. I hope you're going to wear that uniform for a long time.
Yeah, not so long now. Not so long now that I'm honorably discharged.
Sit down here and let me pour your coffee for you.
Will you have anything else, Captain Stanley? Some toast?
No, not a thing. Nothing, thank you.
It's awful good to see you home.
When did you get here, Phil?
I got here last evening. The minute I woke up and got out, I jumped the hedge and came over here. And whom do I run into but the Davis family?
Yes. They arrived late last night, too, or rather early this morning.
And what about Sylvia, Mrs. Field? How's she?
Sylvia's married to a naval officer. She's in Norfolk just now.
Little Sylvia married?
Uh-huh.
What do you know about that? To whom?
To Chick Norris.
No, not the chick. Golly, do you mean after turning him down all those times, she finally said yes?
Oh, she not only said yes, but she loves him.
Well, it certainly shows that persistence wins the race, doesn't it?
Sometimes. Oh, Phil, I'm so glad to see you. I'm so terribly glad to see you today.
Oh, gee, thanks. Oh, but why today?
Because it's almost like fate having you walk in here just now, just at this minute, just at this point in Joan's life.
Well, what do you mean?
You like sugar, don't you, Phil, and a little cream?
Yes, thank you. Well, what about Joan?
She's left Harry. She's come home to me.
Left Harry? Oh, I don't believe it. Why, they're crazy about each other. I never saw two people more crazy about each other than Joan and Harry.
They were crazy about each other.
But I saw them together. Harry's a great guy. Why would Joan want to leave Harry?
Oh, Phil, there's so much to tell you, and there's so much I don't know myself. Joan was too tired to talk for long after she got here, but Lily's told me a little about it. Things haven't been going well between them for a long time.
I don't get it. Joan would never leave Harry, never in a million years. Oh, aren't you exaggerating, Mrs. Field? Isn't she here on a visit and you're hoping she'll stay a long time?
She told me herself she'd come home to stay.
But how? Why? I don't understand. What could have happened?
Why, Phil Stanley.
Joan!
I don't believe it.
Well, I didn't know you were up here. I didn't even know you were awake.
Oh, Phil, you look wonderful. You look simply gorgeous, doesn't he, Mother?
He certainly does.
You look pretty gorgeous yourself.
Oh, I look terrible. I was practically all night driving over here. And if I'd dreamed you were here for breakfast, I'd have dressed up instead of coming down this way with my hair down.
That's the way you always used to wear your hair, Joan. Around your shoulders like a golden cloud. No wonder you've got such a handsome son.
Oh, Sammy, you've seen Sammy?
Seen him. Sammy's mad about Phil. Calls him Cat Phil.
Oh, does he like you already?
Well, he ought to. I've liked him so long. Kidding aside, Joan, he's a great guy.
Well, I'm glad you like him. Did he behave all right, Mother?
Well, he wouldn't look at me or speak to me, and he cried every time I came near him. Otherwise, he behaved beautifully.
He'll get used to you when he's been here a while.
Oh, if you only knew how good it sounds to hear you say that, Joan.
I'll say it sounds good with me back here for keeps.
For keeps?
Yeah, I've been invalided out of the Army, but I'm fine now. Except that I'm not so much use to Uncle Sam as I was before I was wounded.
Oh, Phil, I didn't know you'd been hurt.
Yeah, but it's all over. And I've got my reward.
Your reward?
Yes. Seeing you, all of you again. Having you here when I get home.
We'll be back in just a moment. But now, strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, juicy, ripe, and luscious sweet, ready to turn into delicious jellies and jams with Serto. Oh, no sugar? Oh, well, shucks. Haven't you heard? Each sugar stamp 40 in your family's number 4 ration books is worth 5 pounds of sugar for home processing. In a family of 4 people, that's 20 pounds of sugar, ma'am. And for more sugar, be sure to see or write your ration board. They'll tell you how to get extra sugar for canning, preserving jams and jellies. Wonderfully delicious jams and jellies with Serto. How to do it? Well, with each bottle of Serto, there's a booklet with 90 different recipes for all the popular berries and fruits. Every recipe's home-tested to make sure it's right. Follow these recipes exactly, and even if you've never even thought of making sweet spreads before, in just 15 minutes after preparing fruit, you can have beautiful jam or jelly topped with paraffin, cooling on the table. So don't wait. June berries will soon be gone till next year. Save yours now in luscious jams and jellies with Serto. In the dining room of the Field home, Phil Stanley stands smiling down into Joan's eyes. Phil, her playmate and companion through childhood, whom she has almost forgotten, but who has not forgotten her. Well, there until tomorrow at this time, we leave the story of When a Girl Marries, written by Elaine Carrington. This program is presented by Serto, the largest-selling bottled natural fruit pectin in the world. Remember, ladies, you get more and better jams and jellies from the same amount of fruit that certain way with Serto. C-E-R-T-O. Serto. Your announcer is Charles Stark.
Half a minute for Minute Gelatin. Minute Gelatin, oh, Minute Gelatin. It helps conserve your precious food. That's Minute Gelatin. Minute Gelatin.
Uncle Sam has a new slogan: Food fights for freedom. Produce, conserve, share, and play square. And Minute Gelatin helps to conserve food. It's a plain, unflavored gelatin that works wonders with leftovers. Leftover meat, chicken, fruit, vegetables can be turned into substantial main dishes.
It helps conserve your precious food. That's Minute Gelatin. Minute Gelatin. Minute
This is the National Broadcasting Company. This is the National... WEAF, New York.
This program will be interrupted for any invasion bulletins.
What's new? What's new? Post Raisin Bran is new. A cereal sensation, a magical combination. Post Raisin Bran, it's new.
Post's Raisin Bran, the exciting new cereal that's rich with raisins, presents We Love and Learn. We Love and Learn, the romantic story of Andrea Reynolds. Gardeners are very spoiled people. Every day they can pick themselves a different set of greens for lunch and salad and a plate of lovely new vegetables for dinner. But when it comes to breakfast cereals, well, we never yet heard of anyone growing their own. But shucks, who'd want to? Now that we can buy Post's Raisin Bran at the grocer's. Yes, I said Post's Raisin Bran. It's delicious, it's different, it's new. You've never before tasted anything quite like this combination of golden wheat and bran flakes, plus lots and lots of California seedless raisins. Yes, lots of raisins. Not a mere 1 ounce, not just 2 ounces, but 3 full ounces in each 11-ounce package. And of course it's the raisins that make the big difference in this delightful cereal. Real 40% bran flakes plus seedless raisins make Post's Raisin Bran just the right combination. Right for flavor, right for nourishment, and right for regularity. But don't take my word for it. No, indeed. Try this delicious combination of toasted wheat and bran flakes, plus lots of seedless raisins for yourself. Look for the blue and white box and the name P-O-S-T-S, Posts, printed on every package. Ask for Post's Raisin Bran by name. It's new. Now, we love and learn. In Andrea's heart, there's a growing fear that the tragedy which has befallen Jim and his young wife, Margaret, is about to affect the plan she and Bill have made for an immediate marriage. She knows that in Jim Martin, Bill sees himself, and in the place of Margaret, he pictures her. Margaret. Andrea finds herself wishing that Colonel Rogers had not given her the job of breaking the news of her husband's condition to a young woman she doesn't even know. What is she going to say to her? How can she convince Jim's wife of her duty to her husband in this crucial period of his life? In the large, homey kitchen of Mrs. Van Cleve's boarding house, Andrea and Taffy and Mrs. Peters are discussing Jim's sad plight. Taffy, outwardly sympathetic but secretly pleased with the turn of events which threaten to disrupt Andrea's plans, and Mrs. Peters, who intends to use the Martins' tragedy as a weapon for the same purpose, have joined forces in an attempt to make Andrea see the foolhardiness of a war marriage. To bring home her point, Mrs. Peters has just asked Andrea if she really thinks Margaret will be willing to take back a crippled husband, and Andrea answers her,
Well, of course she will if she loves him.
Well, that's a pretty severe test of a woman's love, I think.
If love can't stand being tested, it isn't much to start with.
You're very right, my dear. I don't know Mrs. Martin, and I may be wrong. But I do feel that if her love for Jim had been strong and real, it could have withstood the test of a separation.
But perhaps
she could have waited until he came back to marry him. She wouldn't have added to his responsibilities, and he wouldn't be worrying himself to death with reproaches now.
But what's the difference? It's still a question of how much she loves him. Taking him back now or marrying him now, it's still the same thing.
I don't agree with you, my dear. It's Margaret's duty now to take back her husband. It's her duty to him and to society. If he weren't her husband, it would be different. Then she could act in accordance with her feelings. As it is, she no longer has that right.
Mrs. Peters, you've just said a mouthful.
I what?
Said a mouthful. For the first time since you arrived in this house, I find myself agreeing with you. But completely.
Well.
Thanks, Taffy.
Don't you see, my dear, if Margaret does take Jim back now, he can never be sure she didn't do it out of pity.
Well, that's why Colonel Rogers wants me to talk with her. To help her avoid Jim suspecting it may be pity.
Pity is a hard thing to live with, Andrea. Today it's pity, and tomorrow it's contempt. Jim Martin knows that.
But if they hadn't been married and she wanted to marry him now, couldn't he feel the same way? Couldn't he still feel it was pity that was making her do it?
Sure he could, but he wouldn't.
Why not?
Because a guy in love believes what he wants to, and he'd want to believe that the girl had a choice.
Exactly. Miss Graham, I must say you surprised me. I didn't expect...
When you're right, Mrs. Peters, you're right. I never let my personal feelings interfere with my common sense. I wish Andy'd take after me. And not with an axe, either.
We agree again, Miss Graham. If only Andrea would use her intelligence instead of her emotions.
Well, as long as you two are getting along so beautifully, I think I'll go get ready for my appointment.
Oh, Andy, for the love of Mike, don't go getting hurt. It's for your own good.
If you listen now, my dear, you'll be grateful someday. You'll know what good friends we were to you.
Well, there's just one thing I want to say before I go. You're both wrong, and time will prove it. When two people love each other, nothing in the world matters so long as they have each other. Duty, obligations, right, wrong, they're only words. They don't count. Margaret has Jim back alive. If she loves him, that's all that'll matter. That he's come back alive.
Andy?
You are in, aren't you?
Yeah, all in. What do you want to leave me with my hands full of Mrs. Peters for?
Well, don't tell me you're bored already, Taffy. Why, you've just discovered that you and she are soulmates.
I'm getting a real kick out of you, Andy. You're doing all right.
Thanks.
Yes, sir, you've come a long way since you landed in New York. There's hardly any hay left in your hair. Now, if you'd only get the cobwebs out of your eyes.
Well, if you think your tongue is the broom that's going to do it.
Oh, better and better. There's hope for you. Someday you're going to crash your way right through those great big trees and actually see the forest.
Oh.
Come on, Andy. Get down off your high horse before you fall and break your neck. I'm only doing what's best for you.
In your opinion.
And I've got a lot of respect for my opinion. It's built on a solid foundation of expensive experience.
Well, you paid for it. I suggest you use it yourself.
Can I help it if I've got a big heart? Want to share my experience with my friends?
Well, I don't want your experience. I want my own. Nobody's going to live my life for me. I don't want any shock absorbers.
Spoken like a man.
Oh, Taffy.
Now, look, Andy. All this highfalutin talk, this battle of wits, isn't getting us anywhere except sore at each other.
Well, I'm ready to quit whenever you are.
I've been pulling my punches up to now, but if you want a showdown with me, you're going to get it.
I don't think that's necessary. You've made your attitude quite plain.
Well, I'm going to make it plainer. You're sore anyway, so I may as well give it to you straight.
I've got it straight. You don't approve of my marrying Bill.
Bill isn't the right man for you.
You've said that before.
And his mother says it. Maybe for a different reason, but we're both right. Now, don't get me wrong, Andy. I'm not saying it because I don't think Bill has the makings of a nice enough guy.
It's just that, well, he's still all tangled up in his mother's apron strings. I'm warning you, honey. If you marry him now, he'll never get untangled. What's more, he'll end up tying those apron strings around you, too. And one fine morning, you'll find yourself choking to death.
Well, what would you suggest I do? Tell Bill to choose between his mother and me?
Oh, yeah, I can just see you doing that. Besides, it wouldn't do a bit of good anyway. A man's got to be a man on his own. Not because a girl he's madly in love with asks him to be.
Are you all through, Taffy?
Talking, maybe. But I'm not through trying. Not by a long shot.
Then suppose I ask you to mind your own business.
Won't do you any good. I'm an obstinate son of a gun, and I'm your friend. And that makes you my business.
Miss Andy?
Yes?
There's a telephone call for you.
Telephone for me, Mr. Bones?
That's right.
Well, thank you.
It's a man with an awful mellifluous voice.
Well, I wonder who it is.
Well, I expect you could find out by accident.
Excuse me, Taffy. I'll be back in a few minutes, but don't wait unless you want to. Oh, I'll be right here. I've got nowhere to go. Hello?
Miss Reynolds?
Yes?
Colonel Rogers speaking. How are you?
Oh, fine, thank you. I was just getting ready to leave for the hospital.
Good. That's why I'm calling you. Mrs. Martin has already arrived.
Oh?
She came a little sooner than we expected. She's waiting now, so if you can hurry a little.
I'll get there just as soon as I can.
That's fine. And, Mrs. Reynolds.
Yes, Colonel?
Please come to my office first before you inquire for Mrs. Martin. Some unexpected developments have occurred in Private Martin's case that I must talk to you about before you see his wife.
So the interview Andrea's been dreading is actually upon her. As she turns away from the telephone, her heart beats with sickening rapidity, and her mind is trying frantically to remember all the things she intends to say to Margaret Martin. More about Andrea Reynolds in just a moment. But first,
3 cheers for the newest thing in cereals. That's Post's Raisin Bran. 3 more cheers for the 3 full ounces of raisins in each 11-ounce box. That's a lot of raisins, lady. And extra raisins mean extra flavor in this delightful new cereal combination. Yes, I said delightful. For that's the word for crunchy golden wheaten bran flakes combined with chewy seedless California raisins. No wonder folks all over town are falling for Post's Raisin Bran first time they try it. They know a good thing when they taste it, and so will you. Put Post's Raisin Bran on your shopping list right now. You'll find it at the grocer's. Look for the blue and white box with the name P-O-S-T-S, Posts, printed on every package. Be sure to ask by name for Post's Raisin Bran. And remember, it's delicious, it's different, it's new.
All Andrea's worry about tomorrow's meeting with Margaret Martin will not prepare her for what happens when she arrives at the hospital. For Colonel Rogers has a startling request which forces her to change all her plans.
You'll want to hear tomorrow's chapter of We Love and Learn, brought to you by Post's Raisin Bran, a magic combination of crisp toasted bran flakes and choice seedless raisins. Remember,
What's new? What's new? Post Raisin Bran is new. A cereal sensation, a magical combination. Post Raisin Bran, it's new.
yes, Post's Raisin Bran. Your announcer, Bernard Dudley.
Laddie, Jip, smart dogs, listen. Do you know any fussy little dog who turns up his nose and says, I won't eat when he gets food he's not used to? Then put him on the trail of Gaines. G-A-I-N-E-S. Gaines Dog Meal. the complete meal that gives you your meat meal, minerals, vitamins, everything a dog is known to need. It's been a favorite of big kennels for years. So speak. Speak for game. America's largest selling dog food.
This program came to you from New York. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
It's 6:60 on your dial for the 6 o'clock news. 30 minutes from now, listen to Don Hollenbeck's summary of the evening news. WEAF, New York.
Just Plain Bill, usually heard over most of these stations at this time, will not be broadcast today in order that the National Broadcasting Company may bring you the special program that follows. Just Plain Bill will be heard at its regular time tomorrow. Now NBC continues its coverage of operations in Europe with a special broadcast from NBC's staff in England. We take you now to London.
This is W.W. Chaplin in London. It is now 11:30 p.m., and we hope in a few minutes to have the latest communique concerning the invasion from SHAEF, Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force. That will be SHAEF communique number 4. We are expecting to receive it momentarily now. In the meantime, I can tell you that the invasion is still going well, though it would be a great mistake to overemphasize the tremendous successes we've had in the initial phase. SHAEF itself has made a great point of this today, calling attention to the fact that our men have now been fighting for almost 48 hours under very difficult conditions, and that they have not yet got their second wind to carry them on to new victories. Here is one late dispatch which came in just a few minutes ago from NBC's George Wheeler, who has been with the American naval forces in the Channel since before the invasion began. Wheeler tells of the loss during the first invasion phase of a United States destroyer, the name of which I am not yet privileged to disclose. He says this destroyer had gone in quite close to the French shore, and apparently one of the enemy shore batteries got her range and just pumped her full of shells. George Wheeler says that as many of the destroyer's crew as could got off before she sank and were picked up by a nearby ship. But it's impossible at this time, he says, to say what percentage of the destroyer's crew was saved. After the destroyer was sunk, says Wheeler, the German battery was silenced within 3 minutes by the venerable battleship Nevada. Well, that just goes to emphasize what I've been saying in these broadcasts ever since the invasion began before yesterday's dawn. We're bound to have many losses in all branches of the services, and it is only safe to presume that some of them may be heavy losses. And now, as we haven't yet received that SHAEF communique number 4, which I told you we're expecting, I would like you to listen for a moment to one of the reporters who's been right in the thick of invasion activity and who's returned with a first-hand eyewitness story. This man is Robin Duff, war correspondent of the British Broadcasting Corporation, whose assignment took him across the Channel with the United States Navy. And now you'll hear Robin Duff himself.
Aboard the United States ship Barnett, very gallant veteran of Guadalcanal, Naples, and Salerno, we heard over the speaking tube 1,000 yards from the anchorage. The young navigator pored over his chart, and the voice continued quietly over that tube. 500 yards, 100, 50 yards, let her go. We dropped anchor on a pinpoint bearing. Winches creaked, the soldiers went quietly to their debarkation stations. The experience of other landings was at work, and boatloads of men who an hour before had sat down to a steak breakfast were in the water, milling around in the choppy seas, waiting for the hour that had come to have an almost mystic significance, H hour. But even then, we could hear the drone of the air transport, the transports that were carrying the paratroops to land behind the defenses. As they drew over the coast, faint bursts of flak went up to meet them. But soon we saw the glare of fires, and we knew that those men had dropped to earth and done their work. And then the bombardment. For 3 hours the ship quivered, and the air pulsated with the sounds of the greatest bombardment ever conceived. 500 tons from the Royal Air Force for each of 10 gun batteries. For each battery, the weight that came down on London in the worst raid. Ton after ton of high explosive from the naval guns. The dull thud of explosion as the paratroops used their dynamite. And then the American daylight bombers. The landing craft were just offshore. Smoke was down, and in the boats every man was tense, waiting for the shock of that first landing. And then the heavies dropped their load. They lifted that beach right in the air, killed everything living, smashed the defenses. The taut hardness of the jaws of those American soldiers softened into a smile of almost inexpressible relief. The last bomb dropped, and it was 8-hour D-Day. It's difficult to look back at the moment, at the days and hours of anxious expectancy beforehand, at the picture in the Bay of the Seine all through the day. It's difficult to look back and to make order out of the vast complexity of planning and timing and power. In front of you lies the coast of France, flat and green, broken here and there by the spire of a church or by a rise in the contours. On every side, to the horizon and beyond, a fleet of ducks and landing craft roaring their way to and from the beaches, of landing ships opening their bellies to disgorge their men and material, of destroyers and coastal craft on constant watch for the enemy's E-boats and U-boats, of battleships and cruisers, Arkansas, Nevada, Texas, Hawkins, Enterprise, Quincy, some of the proudest names of the American and British fleets, steaming close into the enemy shore, pouring in their broadsides to the German strong points. It was a picture that put a lump into your throat and left the tears not very far from your eyes. And all the time, high overhead, liberators and fortresses, marauders, lightnings, thunderbolts, and spitfires went on their missions of attack or protection. As the small craft came back, a new fleet hove into sight. More men and material were ready for the moment when the commanders called for them. And as they came, the small craft drew alongside the Barnett. Men whose job was done had come back to their parent ship. They brought others with them, men whose job had also been done, and who had given their lives in the doing of it. Sad-faced sailors helped the wounded aboard and carried them to the doctors. And they carried one stretcher with a gentleness that hurt in the midst of this din of battle. The man on the stretcher was wrapped in the flag of the United States. Even at the greatest moment of this greatest of all military operations, there was a time to pay respect to the men who died in helping to win a magnificent success. Success it was. The fighting on land is hard and bitter, and only the first stage has been accomplished. But that first stage has been carried through with supreme efficiency. It's been carried through by the forces of 3 countries, integrated, equipped, commanded, and of great courage. Thank you, Robin. You have just heard Robin Duff, BBC war correspondent, who witnessed the initial phase of the invasion from a vantage point on an American naval vessel. And now, here is that communique number 4, which I told you we were expecting. It reads like this, quote, Allied troops have cleared all beaches of the enemy and have in some cases established links with flanking beachheads. Inland fighting generally is heavy. An armored counterattack in the Caen area on Tuesday evening was repulsed. Enemy resistance is stiffening as his reserves come into action. The landing of troops and seaborne military supplies continues on all beaches, despite the northwesterly wind which has persisted since the assault. Shortly before dawn today, light coastal forces, while sweeping to the eastward, encountered a superior force of enemy craft. Action was immediately joined, and damage was inflicted on the enemy before he could make good his escape. Enemy coastal batteries, which were still in action today, have been silenced by Allied naval forces. It is not yet known whether all has been finally reduced. Allied aircraft have been directing the fire of the USS Texas, Captain C.A. Baker, USN, wearing the flag of Rear Admiral Carson F. Bryant, USN, and HMS Glasgow, Captain C.P. Clark, DSO, RM, who, together with other Allied warships,
had been engaging inland targets behind the beaches. Allied aircraft of all types and in great strength have closely supported our land and sea forces. Early this morning, airborne operations were resumed on a very large scale. Supplies and tactical equipment being delivered to our ground forces. In 2 operations this morning, medium and light bombers attacked large troop concentrations and military buildings close behind the enemy lines, as well as gun positions in the battle area and railway lines south of the battle area. Road, rail, and other targets, including armored vehicles, troop concentrations, gun positions, and ammunition dumps, were also attacked during the morning by fighter bombers. Heavy bombers in medium strength attacked focal points on the road system in the area south of Caen early this afternoon. Fighters escorted the bombers and also strafed and bombed railway yards, locomotives, trains of oil tank cars, flak towers, radio installations, and airfields over a 40 to 50-mile area south and southeast of the battle area. Continuous patrols were maintained over shipping, the beaches, and the battle area. More enemy aircraft were encountered than on Tuesday, and a number of them were shot down. That's the end of Shafe's Communique number 4. This is W.W. Chaplin, returning you now to the NBC newsroom in New York.
And here in the NBC newsroom in New York is Robert St. John.
And here are a few bulletins that have come in while Bill Chaplin's been talking to you. The first one is a bulletin from Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force, which says that General Eisenhower has made the journey across the English Channel today to the beachhead vicinity in a Royal Navy warship. Along with him was Admiral Sir Bertram Ramsay and also several staff officers. And here's another bulletin which says that returning Marauder bomber pilots reported tonight that the French city of Coutances on the lower side of the Cherbourg Peninsula is burning. And here's something that our NBC monitors, who are sitting right outside this glassed-in studio with earphones over their heads, here's something that they have picked up today from the shortwave radio. They heard a German underground radio station reporting that Adolf Hitler is not at the Western Front at all. As a matter of fact, this German underground station said that Adolf Hitler is still at his hideaway at Berchtesgaden, and that he's been there all the time, and that this story about him being at the Western Front is just so much Nazi propaganda. And here's an interesting little story. Pilots returning from missions over the beachheads of France reported tonight that Allied aerial traffic there is so heavy that fighter planes actually have been assigned to guard the flow of this traffic and prevent collisions. Well, what that amounts to is aerial traffic cops, isn't it? These pilots say that they can see jeeps down in the streets of the French villages and towns just back of the coast. They say that emergency landing fields have now been set up, and they say that things appear to be getting under control there on the coast of France. They also said that no enemy planes were in the air in these sectors at all today. And now just let me give you a brief summary of the situation as it appears to us here in New York shortly before 6 p.m. Eastern Wartime. The Allied invaders of France have been beaten. They have beaten back the first fierce German armored counterattacks. The Allied seaborne and airborne troops are said to be making considerable progress along the Normandy coast despite the stiffening German resistance. The Germans have been cleared from all of the landing beaches. In some cases, adjoining landing areas have been linked up with the beaches. Reinforced by airborne troops from a 50-mile-long train of gliders, the Allies have firmly consolidated their holdings along a curving 100-mile front between Cherbourg and Le Havre. The first big German counterattack was made against Allied forces driving inland in the area of Caen, 9 miles inland from the Channel coast. However, this assault was repulsed by the Allied forces. The German radio said that Field Marshal Erwin Rommel has thrown reserves of the German 7th and 15th Armies into the mounting struggle. However, Allied headquarters says the Allies are making considerable progress despite the stiffening resistance and bad weather. And here's the summary of communique number 4, the latest communique from Allied headquarters. It confirms that Allied troops have cleared all the beaches, and in some areas, the troops have established contact with flanking beachhead units. Well, that's the news up to 5:45 Eastern War Time from the NBC newsroom in New York.
Just Plain Bill, usually heard at this time, was not presented today in order that we might bring you the special program just concluded. It will be broadcast at its regular time tomorrow over most of these stations. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
WEAF, New York. The following program may be interrupted so that we may bring you the latest war bulletins.
We now present the unforgettable radio drama Front Page Farrell, the story of a crack newspaper man and his wife, the story of David and Sally Farrell. Ladies, how often do you slip off your shoe in a darkened movie or under a restaurant table because a painful corn is annoying you? Well, why allow corns or calluses to make you uncomfortable? Let me tell you about Free-Zone. Free-Zone is a liquid. It contains pain-relieving and soothing ingredients that bring satisfying relief. Unlike pads and corn treatments which only touch the outer surface of a corn, Free-Zone actually helps remove the corn itself. All you do is follow the simple directions on the bottle. Apply a few drops of Free-Zone directly on the corn with a special glass applicator which comes in every bottle. 3 or 4 treatments are usually all that are necessary to help remove the corn easily. Free-Zone is no more trouble, no more bother to use than that. Don't put up with the torture of corns another day. Get Free-Zone, Freezone, at your drugstore today. And now, Front Page Farrell, the story of a New York newspaper reporter and his wife, Sally. With David and Sally spending the evening with their friends, Chris and Norman Barnett, Paul Dorset stayed home, and home, of course, is Professor Taylor Caldwell's residence, where Paul has been living since Sunday. We find Paul with the professor and his granddaughter, Louise.
I think you're wrong, Professor Caldwell.
Wrong, my boy?
Well, it's here, isn't it? Not there. Oh, to be in England now that April's here.
Is it, Paul? I don't think so.
Nor do I, my child. Oh, to be in England now that April's there. Here.
You see, sir?
No, I do not see. Bless my soul, I know my Browning better than that. Oh, to be in England now that April's... Let me see.
Oh, I'm sure it's there, Grandfather. It's Paul who's wrong.
Want to bet?
Bet, indeed. I'll just get my copy of Browning, young man, and prove it to you.
Oh, it isn't important, Grandfather. Sit still.
Oh, not important when that scallywag thinks he can correct me on my Browning? Excuse me, I'll bring the book back and show you.
That was mean, Paul. You know you're wrong.
Maybe. Anyway, he gets such a kick out of proving he's right.
What?
Haven't you found that out about your own grandfather? Why, this is half the fun.
Oh, I see. And what have you found out about me?
You? Oh, lots of things.
What?
Oh, that I love you. Little unimportant things like that.
Unimportant?
And that you're beautiful, and that you have wonderful blue eyes. They are blue, aren't they?
You know they are.
Silly, I'm just teasing you.
And it's not unimportant that you love me, I mean.
Unimportant? Why, it's...
Now then, my fine friend, we'll see who's right about this.
Oh, here, Grandfather. Sit here near the light.
No, never mind the light, Louise. It only draws bugs. I can see well enough. Now then, Robert Browning, Home Thoughts from Abroad.
Well, is it there, sir, or here?
It's there, you young pup, there, just as I said.
Really?
Paul, you knew you were wrong.
I did not.
Oh, to be in England now that April's there.
You know the gag, don't you, Professor?
Gag, Paul?
A joke, Grandfather. A gag is a joke.
Oh, I know, my child. It's a word they use on the radio. Now then, Paul, what gag?
About that line of Browning's. It's what a lot of girls are saying these days, you see. Only they say it, oh, to be in England now that the army's there.
Oh, Paul.
Oh, you see, sir, it means...
Oh, don't bother to explain it, my boy. The humor doesn't entirely escape me, you know, even if my granddaughter sometimes thinks it does.
Oh, I never thought that at all.
Oh, to be in England...
What about the invasion, Professor Caldwell? I mean, like we were talking last night.
My dear boy, I have no intention of letting you ensnare me in another discussion of the invasion. You're a journalist. You should know more about it than anyone.
Now who's teasing who?
I'd like to have a talk with Farrell about the scrap over there. I'd like to get his ideas on it.
Well, Dave doesn't say much, really. I guess you know that.
Oh, he's so nice. Sally, too. I think they're both just grand.
They're good friends, my dear. Good friends.
Yes, I know.
Well, they're certainly swell to me. Gee, if I hadn't gotten a job with Dave, I'd never have met you.
I gather, my boy, that you refers to my granddaughter.
Oh, heck, Professor, you too.
Thank you, Paul. That's very generous of you.
Oh, Grandfather, don't tease him.
Tease him? Indeed, young lady, I'm going to leave him alone with you.
Really, sir? Don't go in on our account.
Oh, yes, Grandfather, it's such a beautiful night.
And beautiful nights, my child, are many years beyond me. Oh, Paul.
Yes, sir?
Be sure of the latch, you know.
Oh, yes, sir, I will.
One of the guards is right outside, and I'll be in my study. Call me now. Call me if there's the least little thing.
Yes, sir, I will. Don't worry.
Don't worry, young man. It isn't a matter of worry at all.
We'll be right here, Grandfather.
Very well.
Oh, Paul, honestly, when is this going to end?
What?
You know what I mean. This awful fear. I hate it, Paul. I hate it.
Oh, come here, Louise. Up here beside me.
Yes?
It isn't fear, darling. Your grandfather isn't afraid of anything on earth.
I know, but it's so awful. Other people don't live this way, Paul. They don't have guards around their houses and people following them and all this.
Other people aren't your grandfather, dear. He's a famous man. Don't you realize his discoveries, those notes he has inside? Why, they affect the war itself. He's got to be careful, darling. You must understand that.
I try to. It's just not knowing. Not knowing when something terrible might happen.
You mustn't think that way, Louise. After all, you're not alone in this, you know. I'm here, and your grandfather knows Dave Farrell is doing all he can.
Yes, I suppose I'm being silly.
And we do have a good time. Why, by Thursday, you'll be so busy you won't think a thing about it.
Thursday? Oh, your mother and father.
Mm-hmm. Gee, I can't wait to see him. I can't wait to have them see you.
Oh, I'm so glad they're going to stay here in the house.
They'll be awfully grateful, Louise. The room you fixed up for them is terrific.
I don't mean the room. That's nothing. It's just having people here. Nice people like your mother and father. Sometimes I think I want the whole house just full of people.
No, we're doing pretty well so far.
Oh, I'm serious. It helps, Paul. With people here, it makes me think maybe...
Yes?
Maybe it is foolish to be afraid. Maybe nothing will happen after all.
Now, about midnight, David and Sally are just returning home.
Oh, David, not so loud. Jimmy wakes up now. We'll never get him back to sleep.
Oh, I'm sorry, baby. I forgot. Where's Mary Lee, in the kitchen?
She put the cot in Jimmy's room. She's staying all night.
Oh,
Come on out in the kitchen, dear. Fix your lunch.
good. I'm starved.
Oh, that's not a very nice compliment to Chris. I thought her dinner was lovely.
Oh, it was. Only whenever I'm out, I never eat enough. It's the way you watch me, I guess.
Why, David, how awful. Do I watch you when we're out?
No, not really, honey. What's in the icebox?
All sorts of things. You sit down and I'll start piling things in front of you.
You make me sound like Henry VIII.
Who?
You know, the guy with the hunk of roast beef in his hand.
Oh, that reminds me, Thursday night.
What?
I meant to ask Mr. Deck if I can get a nice roast for Thursday night.
Thursday? Oh, you mean Paul's mother and father.
Here, dear, take this, will you?
All right.
It's going to be quite a party, really. Paul and his parents, that's 3. Louise and Professor Caldwell, that makes 5.
What about us?
Oh, naturally, us, dear.
Mm-hmm.
7 altogether. How about some summer sausage?
For dinner?
Idiot, now.
Oh.
Here, it looks wonderful.
Well, I think you're the one that wants it.
I do. I'm kind of hungry, too.
Oh, say, honey, I meant to tell you. We finally settled where they're going to stay.
Oh, Paul's mother and father?
Mm-hmm.
Where, dear?
At Professor Caldwell's.
David, really?
Well, heck, Sally, it does seem silly to put him in a hotel.
But does Professor Caldwell know?
Certainly he knows. You heard Paul tell us last night. He insisted. So did Louise.
I see.
Why do you say that?
I didn't say anything, dear. I was just thinking.
You said, I see. Every time you use that sentence, I know you mean something else.
Some milk?
Yes, please.
Oh, it's really all right, I suppose. Hotels are crowded. And as Paul said, they haven't a great deal of money.
But? Come on, let's have it. But what?
Well, to be perfectly frank about it, David, it seems sort of, I don't know, funny.
And by that you mean...
I mean, dear, that you're the one who has to help Professor Caldwell.
Mm-hmm.
He decided to tell you about the people following him and trying to get his notes. He told you because he knew you'd help. Isn't that right?
Okay, so?
Well, it just seems to me you're losing your place, that's all.
My place? Now, what do you mean by that?
Perhaps that isn't the word exactly, but with Paul in love with Louise and with him living there, now his family going to stay there, too, I just think... Oh, I don't know. I'm all wrong, I suppose.
No, you're not, Sally. Go on. You think what?
It just doesn't seem to me that it's right, David. Professor Caldwell trusts you, don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
What must he think if you allow all those strangers to move in on him?
Strangers? Honey, it's Paul. He works for me, remember?
Yes, I know, but...
Actually, his moving in there was a break for me. I can keep that much closer to the thing.
I know, David, that's all true, and they are his mother and father. Goodness knows it's nice of Professor Caldwell to put them up.
Why, sure, honey. You're just fussing about nothing.
I suppose I am at that.
Matter of fact, I think it's going to be fun having Paul's parents here. From the way he talks, they must be pretty swell people.
Of course they are, David. Why, he's the most devoted boy I've ever known.
Sure, you just wait and see. Thursday night will be fun.
I do worry too much, I guess. It's only that I can see how much Professor Caldwell trusts you, David. I'm so eager to have you help him. Anyone can see how much it means. You must help him, David. You must.
Yes, perhaps Sally does worry too much. For as David says, it looks like the days ahead will be fun. You won't want to miss any of this interesting story, so listen tomorrow for another chapter of Front Page Farrell. Do painful, unsightly corns and calluses stop you from having fun at the beach or in the country? Why spoil a good time when Free-Zone will help fix up those corns? Free-Zone is a liquid containing pain-relieving and soothing ingredients that give welcome relief. When you apply it, notice the almost invisible coating it forms. Unlike pads and corn treatments which only touch the outer surface of the corn, Free-Zone actually helps remove the corn itself. And it's so simple to use Free-Zone. Just apply a few drops with the handy glass applicator which comes in every bottle. Follow directions, and after a few applications, Free-Zone usually aids in removing the corn easily. Many druggists have recommended Free-Zone for over 27 years because it works. Get a bottle of Free-Zone, Freezone, today. Front Page Farrell is on the air again at the same time tomorrow at 5:45 p.m. Eastern Wartime over this station. Be sure to listen. This is Mark Goodson saying goodbye for Front Page Farrell and inviting you to listen to Easy Aces, radio's distinctive laugh novelty, on the air tonight over another network. Consult your local paper for time and station.
Get really fast, truly wonderful relief from a sudden attack of heartburn or indigestion due to hyperacidity. Carry a handy box of Bicidol mint-flavored tablets with you whenever away from home. When taken as directed, these tablets give incredibly fast relief from stomach distress due to stomach acidity. Easy to carry, easy to take. Bicidol mint-flavored tablets are only 25 cents at all druggists. Get some today.
This is the National Broadcasting Company.